The whole trip was something of a fluke. They were scheduling a power outage for my neighborhood, and I sent Mike a message and said, "Hey, you want to get together for lunch? Because there's going to be a power outage." He thought I meant the following day. So he called me up and said, "Hey, let's get together tomorrow and go to Salton Sea, Slab City, Salvation Mountain, take some photos." I said, "Sure, let's do that." Anyway, our first stop along the trip as we headed east was Kauai, Teonet, Vista Point. I thought I'd pull out my glide cam and try using it for the first time. Not quite as simple as it looks, and especially on the uneven path that we were walking on here. A week and a half later, it's raining cats and dogs outside and has been for hours. You can see from this film that it's very, very dry up in these desert mountains. I would guess that within the month, it's going to be very green up there. Very beautiful, but the downside of that is we're going to have a lot more brush in the mountains come fire season. That could be a dangerous situation. They're trying to figure something out. I don't know about these two guys. Anyway, they'll figure it out eventually. So we move along our way. We hit the curves going down the mountain. And Mike says, "Hold on, buckaroo." And we made pretty good time heading down the mountain. Not quite as fast as the film would suggest. I sped it up a little bit, but you get the idea. As we come down the hill, start coasting through Palm Desert, we get to La Quinta and we think, "Hey, you know what? Tommy Gleason lives there. Let's give him a call." So we did. But he never answered. Unfortunately, he was off to Loma Linda to some doctor's appointments that day. So we headed on south and went to our next stopping point, which is the North Shore Beach and Yacht Club. Now, there's no yachts and there's no boats there. Not used for that anymore, which is unfortunate. It's a beautiful building inside and out. But we thought, well, we'll take some pictures of the plant life and the animal life and insects and birds and whatever else we can see. And we're just playing around with our cameras, trying to capture random shots and experiment with our settings and so forth. Now, this is a view of the back of the yacht club looking out towards Salton Sea. Now, if you don't know much about Salton Sea, and I didn't really know that much because I hadn't been there since I was about 10 years old, went with my grandparents once fishing. It's a huge, huge body of water, approximately 400 to 500 square miles, and it just goes on forever as you go down the road. Just south of where we were at the yacht club, there's a very large waterfowl habitat, and there's giant white pelicans, white egrets, thousands of seagulls, mud hens, and other birds, you name it. They're all right there, and we thought it'd be pretty interesting to take some pictures of them. And of course, the sun's starting to get a little bit into the afternoon sky, and it's glistening off the water. Oh, that's not water, that's an ant I was trying to follow. Anyway, minor distraction. I love the way the water looks. It just looks like it sparkles of stars on top of the water. Very beautiful at this time of day. And I got some nice silhouettes of the birds. Now here I had to brighten this up a little bit so you could see the sign. It's looking north. We're actually traveling south. And we're going to be on our way and head for the real destination, or the primary destination, which was Salvation Mountain. And I'd seen a special on TV about this before, but had never been there. And I'll tell you what, it's a whole different thing being there in person and seeing it up close. It's just pretty awe-inspiring, really. Now you see a pretty unassuming little dirt road, a little homemade sign, "Enter here." And then there's a little more colorful sign telling you you've arrived at Salvation Mountain. And then you look up there and see this colorful thing in the middle of nowhere, just desert, dirt, brush, trees with hardly any vegetation on them. It's just wild. Now, the guy Leonard Knight, who created this, actually lived in this homemade camper part of the 30 years that he lived and worked there. And the colors, the art that he created there, considered folk art or outsider art, is pretty interesting. It's kind of awe-inspiring once you're standing among it all. It's just kind of mind-boggling to think that this guy spent 30 years of his life creating this. And unfortunately, he had just died like 2 weeks before we got there, which was very, very sad. I kind of wanted to talk to him, pick his brain a little bit, but unfortunately, we didn't get the chance to do that. So we just had to kind of try to take it all in. And like I say, that's kind of a big job. There's so much there to see. And as you probably guessed by now, it's largely Bible related, religious related, God, Jesus, love. These are themes that appear over and over and over again throughout Salvation Mountain, and the bluebirds and the flowers and the good thoughts that come out of it. You just sit there and look at it all and shake your head and, oh wow, this is really something. This has actually been recognized as a folk art site now, and if you look it up on Google Maps, you can actually Google it, and it has been dedicated as a site that is considered worthy of protection and preservation. And there are conservatives there on site now trying to dedicate their time and their work to fixing some of the ravages of the weather and the sun, and trying to preserve and repaint and make this place look like it did when it was first done. This structure here, there's windows, and windows from trailers, windows from motorhomes, windows from cars, and they let the light in this enclosed structure. It's kind of like a multifaceted cave, and that's what's letting the light through. And of course, he's put bluebirds all around. Just amazing. When I get some of these overhead shots, it really doesn't do justice to standing there, because you can't believe that all this stuff is tied and hung over your head. Here's the Folk Art Society of America designating Salvation Mountain as a folk art cultural site. Mike's walking down the yellow brick road there, getting a few shots. Every color is every color that's imaginable. It's just this plaque was dedicated to Leonard Knight and tells a little bit about his history. eyes just soak it all up. You're walking around in here. There's just so many colors and so many textures and so many things that he's created out of molding putties. Windows, ports like this, aside from just the windows, there's also ports that go all the way through the walls. And I asked Mike to walk over to this one and look through, get an idea. They're actually pretty deep in this wall. These walls made of hay and adobe and telephone poles and tree trunks and branches and mud. It's just crazy. There's a lot of these letters and flowers were all made out of putty and other materials, so you could raise them up from the surface and then paint them. A lot of hay bales used in the making of the walls of this thing. This is obviously an unfinished structure. This is toward the back of it. And you can see how he's put these telephone poles and tree branches, and he's tied them together, and he's snugged them up against each other with these come-alongs, or slack pullers as we used to call them in the telephone business. And he pulled them together and then probably couldn't get them apart, so because the tension on them was too much, so he tied them together with rope and chain and whatever he could find, and secured them there so that he could build things around that part and paint them. There's again more ports, and here's a picture that he embedded in one of the walls, a picture of Salvation Mountain with the starfield overhead. And kids would be very tempted to climb. Don't let them. It's definitely not safe for kids to go climbing in here, or adults for that matter. It's more just for looking at, but boy, you know, if a kid could be safe climbing up there, what a blast it would be climbing around in that thing. But that's not what it's for, so, you know. Anyway, the sun's starting to go down. We're getting a bit of an afternoon orangey sky. There's, you know, obviously some clouds in the sky too, but in this case, the sun had kind of broken underneath the clouds, and we were getting a little orange afternoon sun. And so we're going to say goodbye to the bluebirds. The bluebirds are everywhere staring at you. I don't know why, but I was taken with the bluebirds, and I guess Mike was too. He got some shots of them. And you can see how low that sun's getting. So we're running out of time. We got to get moving on to Slab City. And as you can see, Leonard's been over here too, painting birds. They're not blue, but he did paint these birds for Slab City. And someone else made a sculpture out of metal. This person adorned this whole truck and their whole trailer, in fact, with just thousands of little pieces from various things, fans, bottle caps and buckets and dolls and just everything you could imagine was glued onto this truck, and you go, wow, why? There's no answer. And then we got to see this shoe tree, which I thought was pretty interesting. And by then, as you can see, we're done. We're out of light. It's getting dark. This is about the last thing we were able to capture. So I said, you know what? This means we're going to have to come back for another road trip, Mike. It was a great day with a true friend.